Hey everybody. Okay, so the first thing that I like to do whenever I am working with these old windows, I will take a metal putty knife and I will just scrape all the old paint and the old caulking that is inside there, and I like to get that all cleaned out. And you can tell, right, it just kind of it's not hard to get it. Usually once it gets going, it pretty much just comes right out. So I will just keep doing this. I go all the way around, and usually you only have to do one side, and it's the side that's been on the outside, because that's where it's been painted several times, and it's been recalked probably numerous times as well. So I'll just speed this up and we will move along. And by the way, paint scrapes off very easily from glass, so you'll notice later when I paint the frame that I'm not particularly careful about not getting paint on the windows, because I know it'll scrape off. And the final thing, after I get everything scraped off, I then clean it with rubbing alcohol. Okay, so now that our window is all nice and clean, I am going to brush on some decoupage medium. I am using Paint Couture's decoupage medium in the matte finish. And so this is I'm doing a reverse decoupage technique. So depending on what side of the window that you want to use, you are going to put the decoupage medium on the back side, okay? And you're laying your decoupage paper upside down. I hope that makes sense. So see, this is the back side of my window, and I'm laying my paper down upside down so that when you flip your window over, the front of the paper will be behind the glass. Okay, so I just brush on a little bit at a time, about probably 3 to 4 inches, coming down and then all the way across, and then I put my paper at the very top and just kind of use my hands to spread it out, to flatten it out, I should say, first. Okay, and so I got that part on. You're going to flip your paper back. Make sure it's, you're not going to get all the wrinkles out right now, but just make sure it's all, coming to the edge on the sides, and that at the top that you've got it nice and straight. Okay, so then I'm going to take, and I'm using a sponge brush, by the way, and I just poured the decoupage medium in a little styrofoam bowl. I just thought that would be easier. This kind of makes me a little nervous, so I just try to make things as easy as possible. So as you flip the paper back, I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to just come down again about 3 or 4 inches. Oh dear. You got to be a little limber doing this too. But anyway, so I'm going to speed this up. I don't think you need to see me doing this all the way down, but see how I just brush it on all the way across, and I'm not being stingy with the decoupage medium either. So just kind of get a nice coating all the way across. Again, you're going to lay the paper down. Kind of don't go ahead and lay it straight down. Just kind of hover over what you just painted on, and then use your hand to kind of lay it down. Okay. And then I'm just going to repeat this until we get all the way down to the end. Now you'll notice this paper, you could have measured, or I could have measured and cut the paper, but this paper, it will stretch a little bit, so I just went ahead and left it like it is, and at the very end I'll just use an X-Acto knife, and I'll just cut that little part that's left over. But as far as the width goes, it was the perfect width. This size, this window was the perfect size, or the paper. Either way, they were just made for each other. So anyway, I'm gonna speed this up, and I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, so this is the the last bit. I'm getting close to the end now. So I was just going to show you how I have some of that paper left over. Now you're going to want the paper to dry. Don't try to cut it off while it's wet. It could tear. So I'm just gonna, as I'm straightening it out, I'm gonna end up just using my fingernails a little bit, but you'll see how it creases. But see right there at the very end, I'm gonna have like 4 inches of paper left over. So, and that's just so not a big deal. But if it bugs you, you could have measured it and gotten it a little bit better. Okay, so again, this is the back side now of the decoupage paper, okay? So I'm going to take the decoupage medium again, and now I'm going to spread some on this is just like regular decoupaging, but we're just doing it kind of in a reverse manner. So you know how you decoupage, and you would, normally you would put decoupage medium on top of your paper after you've laid it down on the surface. Well, here we're doing that, but this is actually the back of the paper again. So I'm just taking my sponge brush and gonna just coat it all over with the decoupage medium. So as you could see, I just brushed that on. There was no rhyme or reason to it. I just made sure that I got it nice and covered. And so now I'm taking saran wrap. Now this is where you will get your wrinkles out, okay? So, and I'm using a brayer. This is a brayer from Iron Orchid Designs, and I'm just running it or rolling it on top of the saran wrap. This will also cause some of the decoupage medium to, seep out along the edges. But I'll just clean that up later. So you could also use, I know some people use a little felt tip, little card or something, but I've just always used my brayer. So, and I'm moving the saran wrap down as I go. So I'm just doing it a little section at a time, kind of like I did with the painting on the decoupage medium. And I'm just actually just rolling out the wrinkles. So I'm going to do this all the way down, and so I am using actually this is another IOD tool. It's one of the texture tools. They're silicone blades, and so this works as well. I'm actually getting some of the medium off the sides. I don't know why I'm doing it like that, but I'll just keep going all the way down until I get to the end. I don't know why I'm in this stance. It's kind of, it is a little awkward using this, doing such a big project like this. But anyway, I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, so that worked well. It's nice and smooth, but because the saran wrap takes off a lot of the decoupage medium, I always go back and put another coat on there, just to make sure it's nice and covered. So again, I'm just going to take my sponge brush and I'm just going to brush it on just like I did before, and then we'll just leave it to dry. So let's take a quick peek at what it's looking like. I always have to look. I can't help it. But there you go. So see, that's the front of the window now. And so it looks like that, or it doesn't look like that, but the paper is behind the glass. All right, so we'll just move on from here. Okay, so it's nice and dry now, and I'm just taking some white paint. This is by Paint Couture, and by the way, I'm going to have all the supplies that I've used in the description. But anyway, I'm using a white paint because, again, this paper is a little bit translucent, I guess I would say, and when I decoupage like this, I always like to use a light colored paint over it, because if you used a dark paint and you looked at the front of the window, it would kind of, darken the colors. So when you use a white paint, it will just make the colors in the decoupage paper more vibrant. So anyway, I will just paint the entire back, and then I will also paint the frame of the window in the same color. And one thing I forgot to mention is I did take a rotary sander and sand around the frame a little bit. I had a little bit of loose paint, peeling paint. So, you don't have to get it perfect. Obviously, I did not. And I kind of like the vintage look a little bit, but I did sand it smooth. I didn't want any, I didn't want the paint peeling off or anything. So I sanded it a little bit, and that's just personal preference. But anyway, so I will just move along and see you in a bit. So again, let's take a quick look at what it's looking like. It's looking really good. I'm really loving it at this point. So now we will work on the front. All right, so now it's time to paint the front, paint the frame, that is. And as you can tell, I tried few colors before settling on this dark brown. I started with some, that actually was a brown paint I was using up front, up top there, but it just had a gold, it just came out gold. I don't know what it was doing, but it was not looking good with the yellow colors and the flower. So I ended up loving the dark brown. So it's actually a DIY paint. It was layered chocolate. Again, I'll have all the supplies in the description. So I'm painting it all around. And remember, I mentioned that paint comes off glass very easily. So I did not try to be really careful when painting, close to the glass. I just knew that later on I would just take a little putty knife again and just scrape it clean. So, and I did, once I got the first coat on there, I did take a heat gun, dry it, and then applied a second coat. So I will do that now, and then we will wax it, but I'll be back for that. So you may have noticed that when I was drying the paint that it turned to a lighter shade of the brown, and that just happens with DIY paint. Oh, and one thing I should have noted is that DIY paint is a natural, it's a natural paint, it's a clay-based chalk style paint. So I did not need to prime with this paint. Now, most windows, you know, like this is just a window from my house that we replaced. And most of those windows are painted with like oil-based paints or really slick paints. So if you're not going to use a chalk paint like that, then you would need to prime. You need to sand all the paint off or prime it in order for your paint to stick. But DIY paint sticks to pretty much anything, so I just went with that. Now I am waxing. I'm using clear wax first. So I'm taking DIY clear wax and I'm brushing it all around on the frame. And as you can tell, that dark color comes back. Now after this, I want to add some gold wax. So DIY has a beautiful gold wax, but anytime you add a colored wax on a project, you always want to clear wax it first. That gives you the ability to manipulate the wax and rub it back some, because chalk paint is very porous, and so if you just went in with a colored chalk paint, a colored wax before clear wax, it would really soak that up, and it would just, I don't think it would be, you know, the color that you would like. You wouldn't be able to wipe it back easily. So I'll just keep going, and then I will I'll show you what I mean with the gold wax. Okay, so that looks really good. I love how the brown paint is looking. So here I am adding gold wax. It's called Golden Rule by Paint Couture, and it's a very light, like kind of almost a transparent type wax. So I am just brushing it on. I like those little brushes from the Dollar Tree, and I usually just kind of use one for each color of my waxes. But anyway, so it goes on very smooth with the clear wax already on there. So here I'm just using a rag and wiping it back. You don't even have to wipe it back. And by the way, I did not wipe any of the clear wax off either. I went straight in, right? I didn't even really let it dry. I just went straight in with the gold wax. And you can add, you know, as much as you want, or you don't even have to add any if you didn't want to add any. But I just thought the gold would really make the sunflower kind of just, I don't know, pop, I guess. So anyway, I went all the way around, and I think I'll show you a close-up in just a bit of how it's looking, but it's very, it's pretty subtle. So again, you can add more, or you know, however much you would like. Okay, so let's see if we can get a little closer look of what the gold is looking like. Well, what it's all looking like. See how nice the decoupage paper, but there is, there's the gold, little highlights around the edge of the frame. So I really love how this is turning out. I'm now going to just take a little bit of rubbing alcohol and clean the glass just to remove any of my fingerprints or anything like that. And then, you know, you're done. You can be done right here. But I'm going to keep going. I'm actually going to add some glass chips and some epoxy resin on top of the glass right here. So I really need it to be clean before pouring the resin. So here it is completed without any glass or resin. So if you're still with me, we are going to be adding some glass chips and then some resin. Now, I'm only adding the brown here because after I poured the first coat of resin, I realized I wanted to add some green chips, and so I did not get that on video, but with the green chips, I did the same thing as I'm doing here with the brown. But anyway, they're just little, this is called reflective glass, and they're just little bronze, actually, is what it's called. So it's bronze color and throughout, and then on one side it has like a reflective glass type look. So I just randomly placed it around where I thought it would look good, and then I did the same with the green ones. I had some green as well, and I do have these on my website. So I will just finish this, and then I will explain the resin. So here is a closer look of what the individual glass pieces look like. And so sometimes I will turn them over just to be all of just the glass color, and sometimes I'll have some turned over to show the reflective side. So here is a little closer look of the glass on the glass. So now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna mix up our resin and get that poured. Okay, so for the resin, I am taking just a plastic cup, and I have marked it. I don't know if you can see the little marks there. Normally, I like to use little silicone cups that are pre-marked, but I was out or didn't have any that I thought were clean enough. So I just marked it with a marker on my cup. So what I do is I will take a cup, I will pour water. I'll measure the amount of water. So in this case, I used a half a cup for my marks. So I poured a half a cup of water in the cup, marked it, then added another half a cup and marked that. I then poured that water out and then made sure to dry it really well with a paper towel. There are two parts to resin, a part A and a part B, and they have to be the exact amounts for the mixture. So here I am pouring in my part A, and I'm going to pour it into the first mark that I have on my cup. Then I'll take the part B, and I'm going to pour that up to the second mark. And then I will stir it for 3 minutes, at least 3 minutes. You can go a little bit more, but it really does need to be stirred up at least 3 minutes. And I'm going to use like a stir stick or a popsicle stick or something like that. And you scrape the sides of your cup, and you scrape the bottom of the cup, and you do that for, again, 3 minutes. So I had to grab a new bottle of part A. I was at the end of that last bottle, so that's why it was taking so long to pour out. And it is thicker than the part B, so it does take a little bit more time. So here you can see where I finally got it poured up to the first mark. So now I'm going to take part B, and I'm going to pour that up to the second mark. I'm going to check my time and make sure that I stir it for a good 3 minutes. So again, you're going to stir the sides or scrape along the sides. You're going to scrape along the bottom. Don't stir real fast. You're not whipping it up, but you're just slowly stirring it up, mixing it really well for 3 minutes. As you can see, the two resin parts are, different colors, but as you mix it up, after 3 minutes, it should be all more of one color, and it should be pretty clear. Now, before you pour resin, you'll want to have disposable gloves on because resin it's pretty messy, it's pretty sticky, and it's just kind of hard to get off your hands. You'll need, if you do get it on your hands, just use some rubbing alcohol and take it off. But it's pretty drying. So anyway, I start with my chips when I pour my resin, if I'm using glass chips, and I will drizzle it over those chips first before pouring it onto the rest of the window. And then with my gloved hand, I usually just spread the resin around like that. Now you can use a silicone brush or a stick or something like that. But I just usually like to use my hands. So I'm making sure that I get it all around the sides, the edges. Now, remember I said I used a cup of resin for this, and it actually wasn't enough. I usually pour 2 coats of resin on my projects anyway, but the first time around after the resin dried, I noticed there were a few dimples in there, and that's usually because that you didn't use enough resin. So I'm just spreading it around here. It's also important to make sure your surface is flat, the surface that your window is laying on, because resin self-levels and it flows, in the direction of gravity. And so if your window is not level, it will all move towards, one end. So just make sure it's level, even if you have to use a level to get that surface nice and level. Another thing that I like to have when pouring resin is good lighting. So I'll always have a light shining on my piece. It just really helps to see if you've missed a spot. It helps to see little particles that may have fallen in your resin. That's probably what bugs me the most with resin, is the little bitty things that float in the air that fall into your resin. Now, if you can cover this piece or cover any piece after you've poured the resin, that's so helpful, because it just keeps little dust particles flying through the air. It just keeps it from landing in your resin, as well as any little insects tend to be drawn to resin. But so here, you can tell here, I'm just kind of picking out a few little things. You see my hair is not put up. That's important as well. Hair will fall into the resin. And also, I forget sometimes, and I'll just try to get the hair out of my eyes with my gloved hand full of resin. And yes, I will get resin in my hair, and that is the worst. So just make sure it's all smooth. Make sure you get any of the, any little things you see floating in there. Just kind of, a lot of times I'll take a toothpick as well. But then after you do that, you're gonna just grab a heat gun and pop any of the bubbles that you see. You could also use a little torch, but having bubbles in your resin is very, very common. So just take your heat gun, and you can actually see them all popping. They'll be very small. And I will usually do this, 2 to 3 times within a 20-minute span, because you can pop them and then some more will reappear. And so you'll just want to keep checking that. So like I said, I poured another coat of resin, and as you can see, I added the green glass to the center. So I'm just going to repeat the process of pouring the resin. This is part A, and then I'm going to do part B. And again, I am using a cup and a half this time. So it's 3/4 cup of part A, 3/4 cup of part B, and then I'm going to pour that. And that turned out to be to work really well. So I'm going to keep that in mind. All of my windows now, I'm going to mix up at least a cup and a half of the mixture. So here's what it looks like after repeating that whole process. So now I'm just gonna, check it to make sure there's no little things floating around in there, and I'm gonna leave it to dry. Well, that's it, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to know what you think. Let me know if you'll try it. So until next time, bye.